Hi, everyone, and welcome to Wine.com Experiences. I'm Gwendolyn Osborne. We are so excited to have you join us today as we are talking about Santa Barbara, the next wave. We have three awesome winemakers here to talk about their incredible wines coming from this region. For those of you who submitted questions beforehand, thank you so much. We're going to be incorporating a lot of those questions into our conversation, and then we're going to try to get to a few of those at the end. If you purchase the wines to taste along with us, I encourage you to get those open now, get some glassware out. If you want some snacks, you can grab them. Although I will say these wines are absolutely fantastic on their own. Also, don't feel obligated to open all three wines if you don't feel like you can get through all those. This video will be living on the Wine.com YouTube channel, and so you can always revisit another time to open whatever you don't get to this evening. The wines we are tasting in order are the Diatom Chardonnay, the Cambria Pinot Noir Rosé, and the Neilson Pinot Noir, realizing that they are actually flipped in this image. So sorry, but yeah, we're going to start with the Chardonnay, we're going to go to the Rosé, and then we're going to end with the Pinot Noir. We're going to try to dive in with some really good tasting notes for these, but if you want more information, you can find really awesome wine pages on each wine at Wine.com. If you search for them, they're chock full of information. We've got maps and tasting notes and critic reviews and videos from the wineries. So if you really want to dive in and get more info, you can find them at Wine.com. Okay, let's introduce our winemakers. The three Santa Barbara winemakers who are making waves in the region. We have Greg Brewer from Brewer-Clifton, Jill Russell from Cambria Estate, and Ryan Pace from Nielson. Hello, everyone. Hi, Greg. How are you? Hi, Jill.
Hello.
Ryan. Hello. Okay, welcome, everybody. So before we start, I want to orient our viewers on Santa Barbara. So we're going to pull up a map and have a look, because I think that this region is so interesting because even though it's really far south, it's a cool climate. You know, it's next to the ocean, but it is further south, and you would expect these warmer climate style varieties. But instead, what you have is you have these cool mountain ranges. Here's the map here. Okay, so if you see these mountain ranges, instead of most mountain ranges run north to south, and you've got these that are running east to west. And so what that does is like a giant funnel that takes in that Pacific air and just pulls it in, and the fog and the cool coastal influence. So this comes in and just kind of creates this consistent cool climate, which is why we have amazing Chardonnay and Pinot Noir from somewhere you would normally think would be a little bit warmer. I know y'all will get into describing that more for us. I also wanted to point out on the map that the Chardonnay comes from the Los Alamos Hills, and the Rosé comes, thank you, map again, yay. The Chardonnay comes from the Los Alamos Hills, the Rosé comes from the Santa Maria Valley here north, and then Ryan's going to talk us through a little bit where some of the Pinot Noir comes from, because it's a few different places, but that's the Los Alamos there for the Chardonnay and the Rosé above. And we will dive into that with you guys. So, Greg, Jill, Ryan, we're here talking about this next wave of Santa Barbara, which has a decent history, but it's a fairly short one in consideration of most wine histories. But I would love, before we start tasting, if you would be willing to each give me your kind of definition of the Santa Barbara wine style and what that kind of means to you, maybe in one or two sentences. So, Greg, if we could start off with you on that.
Of course, as the older statesperson, of course.
Yes, well, you know, we consider you royalty of Santa Barbara. We're always going to start with you.
I'll take statesperson, that's fine. I think really, you know, for me, for all of us, I think there's something very unbridled about the ocean. You know, there's something calm about it, but at the same time, there's an energy and there's an unbridled spirit about it. And I think that's really the goal that we all share. And I'm very, very confident that spirit will be transmitted through the wines today.
Excellent. Wonderful. Jill, what about you?
Yeah, we're going to talk about the ocean a lot, how this impacts our wine quality, wine style, what we grow here. We'll talk about Pinot Noir and Chardonnay a lot, but something else I think is a sense of community. Right now, we love seeing each other's faces. We wish we were hanging out. Everyone is very open here, willing to help out, lots of mentors. I'm lucky that these guys are my friends. Sometimes throughout this thing, we might want to tag each other and make fun of each other, but really the respect around the community is really respect for building up Santa Barbara County as a whole. So we just really are proud of the region, and we want to showcase that in our wines. So we all put a lot of effort into them.
Perfect. Ryan?
Yeah, I would say Santa Barbara is really exciting in that we have a lot of diversity here. There's a huge range of wine styles, actually. But I think that one sort of unifying factor is the ocean. And, you know, a lot of the wines in this area tend to have a lot of salinity and savory notes in them. And I think you'll taste that throughout this flight and through other wines throughout Santa Barbara County.
Thank you. I officially would like to be at a beach right now. I mean, I love being here talking to you guys. I just wish we were like, you know.
We have the picture behind you. That's good.
You like that? Yeah. I got my beach theme.
Palm trees on his shirt. He's looking good with the palm tree.
Good point. We're bringing it in. We're trying to get the beachy vibe going while we're stuck at home. But okay, well let's dive into the wines. Do you like all the puns I'm making? You're making waves. We're gonna dive in.
I like it.
Thank you. So Greg, we're going to start with you in this Chardonnay, but you were one of the founding signatories of the Santa Rita Hills AVA. I mean, just making it happen, creating it back in the 90s. Like I said, you're kind of Santa Barbara royalty. Can you know, this is your stomping ground and you're still there, which is a good sign. Tell us a little
Barely.
You're sticking around. You're sticking around this region. You haven't gone off.
Skin of my teeth. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. But what do you think differentiates this region? You know, what's the staying power?
Well, yeah, I've had the honor of working on this stretch for 30 years now almost. And I think, you know, what's really beautiful about that is that, a little audible, I'm back. What's really
wait, is that just me? Okay, you're here, good.
It's like Survivor. What's really beautiful about this area is that, you know, the weather is so predictable, right? I mean, we're in Southern California, and as you mentioned at the beginning, Gwendolyn, the valleys open up due west onto the sea, tempering everything. So we have this very steady climate, this very cool climate, these oceanic soils, and a predictability of climate. So the produce that we raise is mind-blowing. I mean, it's unprecedented in a lot of ways. And so it gives everybody in the area an opportunity to be very vulnerable with the wines, to be very lucid with the wines, to be very kind of elementary and carnal with the wines. And I think that you see, and you see that energy in the results of everything that's produced here. And I couldn't fathom working anywhere else. I love other areas, don't get me wrong, but there's nowhere else I'd rather be.
Yeah. So kind of like the predictability in a way can make you a little bit adventurous and, you know.
For sure. There's an adventuresome spirit, for sure. And there's also a composure that comes with that. Like if you trust your landscape, if you trust a partner and you espouse yourself to that landscape and partner, you can drop your shoulders, you can be vulnerable, you can really give into it and enable it to be what it is. And that's just a gift that we all share here.
Great. Okay, I want to taste this Chardonnay. It's called diatom. So tell us about this label and the inspiration behind the name and the wine itself and creating this wine.
Sure. Yeah. So a diatom is a plankton fossil, and for which diatomaceous earth is mined. Yeah, we have a large mine of it in Lompoc near the winery where we are. And really, there's something very skeletal about that. There's something very oceanic about it, the exoskeleton of plankton. And I wanted a project, we started this in 2005, I wanted a project that was very true to place, very skeletal, very transparent, at the same time, luxurious, right? So sometimes in life, if things are raw, they can be simple, right? They can be straightforward and simple. This is not that study so much. This is something very luxurious and pristine. Yeah, and very kind of unadulterated and pure. And that's something that's a little bit against the grain. Wine's all about equilibrium and being a teeter-totter. So in this case, it's big, massive, old vine, gorgeous fruit, farmed with tremendous care, SIP certified, and then raised in a very succinct way, in a very clean way. So you've got weight, you've got power, you have luxury. But in lieu of anything embellished upon that or placed upon that, it's simply allowed to be raw and naked the way it is. So picture a lobster claw. So instead of butter, béarnaise sauce, and uni on top. It's sliced thin with yuzu at a sushi bar, yeah, and all of a sudden it's clean and delineated and oceanic. And even in this wine, I get the telltale kind of citrus, lemon, lime, stone fruit vibe like we have in our area, the salinity that Ryan mentioned, and also almost like a kelp kind of quality. When I smelled it now at room temperature, there's almost like a kind of a kelpy thing. And you think about that weaving into food, it just harmonizes with food. It becomes part of the food and just as part of the landscape.
Yeah, and I just noticed that when you said the skeletal, I just looked at the label and the type. I was like, oh, that is kind of like skeletal.
Yeah.
I like it. I like that, tying that in there. Okay, so I want to taste it. So I am like a huge unabashed Chardonnay lover. I think it's one of the most diverse grapes out there. And, I love how it really takes on where it's from, that soil, that earth. And then also choices you make in the cellar make a big difference too. So it's just kind of like this malleable thing that can really showcase so many things. So let's talk about what you did with this wine and how we're getting that in the aromas and the flavors and the taste.
Of course, yeah. So this is from one vineyard, part of our estate, a Jackson family called Bar M. Beautiful estate, 25 acres, one block, one clone of Chardonnay. So it starts off very singular, which is important to me. It's like a self-imposed rule, right? Just to start with something very singular, like a diatom also would be. And then that small block is harvested 6 different times over about a 3-week period to layer the wine from the outside, right? So it's akin to a tonality change of going from violin to viola to cello to bass. It's the same instrument, but it kind of becomes deeper and deeper as you go riper and riper. Comes into the winery at night, and then the upbringing is as strict and straightforward and minimal as I know possible. So cold fermented, stainless steel, short hose transit, no malolactic, no disturbance of the lees, and early bottling. So it's really, the goal is to capture Chardonnay almost before it can become something else in some ways. It's very pent up, right? Like a wave before it breaks. It's something very cloistered. At the same time, it's a big wine. So it's got volume and weight, and it's pristine at the same time.
So do you use any oak, any neutral oak?
No, just stainless steel, super cold.
So you're telling me like it's the soil and the vines that are giving me that texture?
That's all it. It's all vines, nothing else. No process really at all. It's very open that way. There's a lot of negative space in the wine, so to speak, right? Just like the package implies. There's really nothing there except for the voice of the fruit, the voice of Bar M, and the voice of the vineyard.
It's really pretty.
Oh, thank you. And I think versatile too, because I think, for those that favor big wines, like a big, full, mouth coating, intense Chardonnay, it's there. And for those that maybe wants an alternative from oak, oak is beautiful. But if someone wants an alternative from oak, that's cool too, right? Because it has that. It kind of accomplishes both of those things.
It's perfect. I'm going to take a glass over to my friend who says she doesn't like Chardonnay, and I like that too, because sometimes oak can be off-putting if you're trying to pair it, even if it's subtle. Like sometimes that if you're trying to put it with food, so this seems like a very versatile food wine too. So
super versatile. I mean, Chardonnay is anyway, and certainly with this, I think that the process is quiet enough that it enables the wine to really be beneath the plate and just become this kind of saline, oceanic kind of thing, right? That's just going to lift up the food and make the food taste more like the food itself. Which is the goal of all these.
The whole idea, right? Yeah. So this is beautiful. Thank you. Like I said, I mentioned earlier that I've bought this wine before I even knew we were all doing this, because I love Chardonnay, and it's a fantastic wine. It's really well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if you want to ask Greg any questions, he's apparently always talking to people. And on Instagram, it's at Brewer-Clifton. But also you? Yeah.
Sure.
So
super easy to reach.
Talk to him.
I'm yours.
Fantastic. Thank you. So let's head over to the Santa Maria Valley with some rosé. Jill. Okay. So Jill, you've been with Cambria just a few years now, but I know that your winemaking history is very Californian, being a native here. So tell us about your path and how that landed you here.
Yeah, I love that you are a lover of Chardonnay, and usually I'm talking about Chardonnay, but I'm very happy to be talking about it.
I also love rosé. Honestly, I love all these things.
Okay, perfect.
Very happy place.
We love you. So I grew up in the Bay Area, California, and catered at a winery in Livermore Valley, and it was a great weekend job and fell in love with being around the vines and the food scene and knew I wanted to get into the business. And I had the opportunity to either go to UC Davis or Cal Poly down here on the Central Coast, but I chose Cal Poly because I recall stopping and, you know, hanging out at the beaches down here. So I think, again, going back to that ocean, where we're at, the vibes, I was really attracted to. UC Davis would have been great too to study wine. But I was very happy with the education I got and was able to be in the backyard of with the wine industry right here. So I had a great apprentice out of college for 5 years with Stephen Ross in Edna Valley. And then I went to France to just jump around a little bit because a lot of my friends were jumping around. And then came back and really wanted to focus in on Santa Barbara. So made sure I was working for great producers. And then this job came, and it's a dream job. I'll be here for a very long time.
Good. Well, we want you to. And what do you think, what makes Cambria so unique here in this region?
Yeah, we are in Santa Maria Valley. So we're talking about all different areas of Santa Barbara County, but Cambria specifically is focused. We're a state grown and produced. So essentially that means it's our vineyard, the winery's in the middle of the vineyard. We have total control. Our vineyard team's been there for a very long time. And so it's, again, we talk about sustainability a lot. So SIP certified, just like Greg mentioned. I love that the family is devoted to the future of the estate. We have vines that are planted in the 70s, so that we have this history of Santa Barbara County. These vines planted in 70, 71 that I get to just walk in and work with. It's like a dream come true for a winemaker. But then we're also, you know, looking at the future and replanting and putting in new clones of different Pinot and really wanting it to be a long-term estate into the future.
Yeah, no, that's great. I know that, you know, Cambria is really committed to sustainability. I know Katie Jackson is doing a lot with sustainable and water, and she won an award with Wine Enthusiast this year about that. And then you have Catherine's Vineyard and Julia's Vineyard, and those are down there together. And that's fantastic. I want to taste the rosé because I think you've done 3 vintages of this, or?
Yes, yeah.
Okay,
and I know people might have a couple different vintages, but really each year I really focused in on 2 specific clones and did a similar winemaking style each year. So really what you're going to get is vintage to vintage differences. But like we've been mentioning, in Santa Barbara County, we're so lucky with our climate. We don't really have to worry too much. And 17 was my first vintage. And then we have 18 and 19. So a couple of different vintages here. But I chose 2 different clones in our estate. So again, how I mentioned, we have these old vines. We use those primarily for red Pinot Noir, but we have some plantings of the Dijon clones and Swiss clones. So we chose clone 2A and 115. Clone 2A brings these red fruits. And when I talk about clones, I always like to add in, if you don't know about clones, and we talk about them a lot with Pinot Noir, and I think when we are talking about our estate, since we're always talking about Julia's Vineyard, not multiple vineyards, we're talking about multiple clones. I think about them as different types of apples. So essentially you have these different types of apples that are bringing different flavors to a wine. So clone 2A is bringing these bright red fruits, and clone 115 is bringing this bright acidity. So we choose these clones on purpose. So I think of this wine as a very purposeful rosé, and we're thinking about it even in the farming. You don't find a lot of single vineyard rosés, but since we are all estate grown and produced, we even put Julia's Vineyard on our label, because you don't find that very often. And then we do a nice, cool stainless steel fermentation to really preserve these bright red fruits and this acidity. It's always the start of harvest, so we're always celebrating the beginning of harvest with our rosé, and remembering how presses work, and the crew gets really excited. So it's a fun, I think of it as like a fun celebration wine. It's a very much like everyday rosé wine, but also can really stand up with food too, with the layered fruit and texture there too.
Yeah, it's so let's taste this. Tell me a little about it. So you got the red fruits coming on. Oh my gosh, I love that apple analogy. I'm totally stealing that. That's really good. Yeah. It is something that's sometimes hard to explain, but because Pinot Noir mutates so easily, you do have clones, and they do really impact the resulting wine. So, but this, I get those red fruits, but there's also this really savory character that comes through on this wine that I love.
which I love, and that's what we always celebrate with Santa Barbara County. When I say strawberries, I don't always say strawberries. I say like the white, like kind of underripe strawberry, which I think adds to the complexity of the wine. So it can hold up to food. In our Pinot Noirs, we always talk about this savory note, this spice. In our Chardonnays, we talk about this saline. So we're kind of talking about both those things tonight. But even in the rosé, I do like having the bright red fruit, but I also love that it does have this savory note, and it has this texture, and it's kind of a sear.
Oh, Jill, where'd Jill go?
She'll be back.
She'll be back.
Los Alamos internet.
Well, you give up. Oh, there she is.
I'm back. Sorry.
That's okay.
I was hoping it would happen with the guys.
It was a dramatic pause.
We've just been drinking rosé while you're gone. So continue on.
That's what it's meant for. It's a fun wine. It's not to be taken too serious.
So what is your favorite temperature? A lot of people want to know, like, how should I serve rosé right out of the fridge, or wait? Like for this particular one, do you like it like just really cold and crisp, or a little while? I mean, I've found it different both ways.
I know. I think most people like their rosé icy, but I do prefer that it, even just now, we brought it out of the fridge, poured it, and it's been sitting while we enjoy the Chardonnay. I think a little bit warmer. You can really get more aromas out of the glass.
Yeah, I agree. It has opened up from when I just had it. So that's delicious. And I mean, other than pairing it with like hanging out at the beach, which would be ideal, you said it's great with food. Are there any favorite food pairings you have?
Well, the other night I just had a goat cheese and beet salad. In our farm box, we get a lot of beets, so I'm always making beet salad. So I think a goat cheese and beet salad always goes well, but smoked salmon and brie, cheese is always great. But you're right, you can just sit on your back patio and enjoy rosé. It's always great too.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite pairings. So well, thank you. This is a fantastic wine. And if you want to learn more about Cambria, you can also follow Cambria on Instagram at Cambria Wines. Okay, let's move on to some Pinot Noir. Ryan, hello.
Hello.
So you were working at a pretty historic winery, like a pioneering founder, Uriel Nielson, was responsible for the first commercial vineyard in 1964. So that's history for Santa Barbara there, actually for most of California. But you've made wine at 9 wineries in 4 different continents. So you clearly started making wine when you were 10, but other than that, what do you think that experience taught you, and how did that experience kind of bring you back to Santa Barbara?
Sure. That's a lot packed into one.
Sorry. Okay, well, let's just start with like, what do you feel like that you got out of going to so many different places and wineries? Then we'll move on to Santa Barbara.
For sure. Yeah. So 2008 was my first vintage in the wine industry. And I started kind of at the bottom, cellar worker, cleaning floors and cleaning tanks and presses, and just really fell in love with the work, the tactile sense. You're working with your hands, you're working with an amazing product, turning grapes into wine. And, I just really fell in love with the lifestyle as well. You're always around great people, great food, and always in a Mediterranean climate is where grapes thrive. So you're always in a beautiful place with favorable weather and everything. So then, I got really into it. And then once I realized that I could travel and work at wineries in other countries, I was totally hooked, and spent about 5 years or so just traveling between the North and Southern hemispheres, finding different wineries to work for. And you learn a lot. So I got to work in Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, France, Chile, Napa Valley, Edna Valley, and a couple other producers in Santa Barbara County. So, all of those experiences have shown me something, taught me some, winemaking perspective, approaches, different techniques. And then being able to bring them back to Santa Barbara County has been probably the best part of it all, really. Santa Barbara is home for me. So I grew up in Santa Ynez Valley, and, also after having traveled to almost 40 foreign countries, you kind of realize how lucky and blessed we are to be in Santa Barbara County. So it's hard to beat that place. So very happy to be back.
At home. Yeah, it's nice to get out. It's nice to kind of get a different perspective, but sometimes good to come home. So I wanna taste this wine too, but tell me where you brought it from a few different places in Santa Barbara, and how do you choose where to get the grapes, and kind of do you have a style intention for that?
Yeah, definitely. So going back to your original point about Nielson. So Neilson Wines, we're named after Uriel Neilson. He planted the first commercial vineyard in Santa Barbara County, 64. And that site is still our estate vineyard. So that's kind of the anchor of all of our wines. That's kind of the main source of fruit for the Nielson lineup, Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. So
how old are the vines there?
Most of the older vines have been replanted, redeveloped.
I imagine.
Yeah. So kind of early 90s is some of the oldest plants at this point, but we actually had a experimental block planted in the early 90s where we have every 4 rows a different clone and rootstock combination. And through those findings, we fermented all of those separately for multiple years, and then determined which clone and rootstocks worked best for that site, and then planted the rest of the vineyard with those clones. So right now there's a little, like right around 23 clone combinations on the site. So we have a lot to play with there. And then this wine specifically, the Santa Barbara Pinot, is coming from not only the Nielson Vineyard and Santa Maria Valley, but also from Los Alamos, where Greg Chardonnay is from. And then additionally, some fruit from Santa Rita Hills, which is a little bit further south, another one of those east-west valleys. So it's really encompassing the entire county. You're getting fruit from the 3 main Pinot Noir regions. And that hopefully gives a complete picture of what Santa Barbara County Pinot is. In general, the Santa Maria part tends to promote a lot of like red fruit, earthiness, spice. And then Los Alamos is a bit more like darker, riper fruit. Mm-hmm. And then Santa Rita Hills tends to contribute a lot of power, tannin, structure. There's more kind of stark soils down there, a lot of wind, and kind of more of the blue and black fruit as well. So all of those things combined, aged in neutral oak, and you get a pretty clean, fresh Pinot.
Yeah, and just somebody had asked about it being 100% Pinot, and I'm like, yes, it's definitely 100% Pinot.
Yes.
It's very hard to blend Pinot with things and have it still taste like Pinot. But oh my God, yeah, I love this. It has a smoky undertone to it, which is awesome. I love that.
Yeah, definitely. It is always good to remind people it is 100% Santa Barbara County, 100% Pinot Noir. And I think a pretty accessible price point for, and it should provide a lot of drinking pleasure for, novice drinkers and experienced, wine snobs as well. So.
Right. It is, and it's important to get really good, good wine at a great price point. And I think all 3 of these represent that enormously, and really showing that sense of place. But Ryan, one more question though, just because a couple of viewers had asked this, of what do you think stylistically sets Santa Barbara Pinot Noir apart from other Pinot growing regions, or even growing regions? I know you've worked in Napa, I know you've worked in many places. So what do you think sets Santa Barbara apart there?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to really dial it down to one thing. It's, wine, of course, as everyone knows, is so nuanced and so many different factors that affect the finished product. But, it comes down to geography, topography, soil type, climate. And, we've already mentioned all the ocean influence that we have. So I think, Santa Barbara has one of the longest growing seasons in the state. So we'll get, early bud break. And then, as Greg mentioned, with our weather patterns, we have so many options of when to harvest fruit. So we can have a really extended hang time and really allow grapes to develop complexities with, we get sunshine, but we also have wind and fog that kind of cools things down. So you get all of the benefits of the sun, but the benefits of cold temperature coming off the cold ocean as well. So, it's not to say that one region's better or worse than the other, but we are just unique, just like Carneros is, just like Santa Lucia is, So I would encourage anyone to taste wine from all over the place and enjoy and learn what you can.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about practicing. So thank you. This is delicious Pinot Noir. And if you want to follow what's going on with Neilson Wines, they are at Neilson Wines on Instagram. We do have a couple of customer questions that I wanted to dive into here. Tripithi from South Carolina asked, what are the key changes you've observed over the last 10 years in production, marketing, consumption, and those you anticipate? Greg, you've been here the longest.
Yeah, thanks.
Do you want to?
Old man in the sea. Let me take my coat off and address this, Gwendolyn.
You clearly started when you were 4, so you know.
Kind, you're kind.
Right.
Just the lighting. It's
a soft light does everything.
Yeah.
So, you want to just address some of the kinds of changes, like how have you seen this evolve, this region?
Well, I think, at the beginning, in the 70s, and it was very experimental. I mean, it was very, very new then, right? And so a lot of people were planting a lot of things, and there's tremendous diversity in the area, because if you're really close to the ocean, it's super cold. If you're further inland, it gets warmer. And so, when you start anything, the true pioneers, the colleagues that are still around and vibrant and awesome that came before I did, they just tried everything. And then there's been a fine tuning, a refinement that's been going on, which is really beautiful. And I think additionally, in the past 10 years, something that I've seen really accelerate is that, with beautiful younger colleagues, such as, the ones with whom I'm sharing the screen and others as well, is that because our season's so long and there's so many different ways to interpret it, there's a beautiful, like a myriad styles that are emerging from this area as well, right? So you can harvest early because you still had a long season. You can harvest later because you have predictability of climate in the fall. And so it's like this huge kind of just spice box or kind of coloring, crayons or something of opportunity in the area. And I think you're really seeing producers kind of grab on to whatever aesthetic resonates with them and really fine tuning that voice of place. And that's in a very exciting chapter, I think.
Exciting. It is exciting. So what about anticipating next? Jill and Ryan, I might let you guys both dive into that. Jill, do you want to start with, at least for Cambria especially, what's next, if anything? What do you anticipate? Is there anything, or are you just going to keep doing what you're doing wonderfully?
I think there's something to keeping the history and traditions. But what I always say, and I probably say it too much, is I'm just bringing this energy. So we've been around for over 30 years and the state has always been beautiful. The wines have always been beautiful, but bringing another perspective from previous places I've worked at, Ryan's traveled everywhere. I've worked a couple of places and different producers, but bringing this energy and really bringing up the spirits and that everyone is trying different things. I think at Cambria, I do love that we are focused on our estate. So it's not like all these new grape varieties or anything. We're really true to having the Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, Catherine and Julia's, but having Catherine and Julia be the women in charge of Cambria and the women I look up to, they're being progressive in, celebrating Earth and Mother Nature and giving back to the future of that, and having more and more wineries be committed to sustainability and climate change. I think that's something that we're going to see in the future, that more and more wineries will jump onto.
Great. And Ryan, what about you? Also just, having a long history, but also looking at the future of how Santa Barbara is going to grow. How are we, talking to consumers about it? How are you talking about the wine and getting the wine out there, because it's really good.
Yeah, I would kind of piggyback onto what Jill was saying with the sustainability. I think that's going to, it already has been, but I think it's going to continue to be a real focal point. And I'm definitely proud to be a part of Jackson Family Wines with our commitment to sustainability, not only in the vineyards, but also on the winery side, finding ways to reduce our water waste and using more solar energy and all of the initiatives that we have to really, just take care of our planet, take care of our lands and all of the resources that provide us with the grapes that we get to make the wines that we get to make, and I think that's not just Jackson Family or just our brands, but I think in general, just the world needs to focus a bit more on taking care of home. So.
Well, I know that often you can be found like hanging off a cliff at some point, rock climbing. So I know that you love the outdoors and being near everything. I mean, obviously it's perfect for you to be doing what you're doing with your love of nature and being outdoors. So that's fantastic too. Is there anything anybody wants to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, I would really encourage, we talked about temperature a little bit, Gwendolyn,
yeah.
About rosé temperature.
We didn't talk about that with Pinot and Chard. Go.
That's okay. We can table it now. But I think the beautiful thing about, you know, this opportunity that you've created for us and the people that are sharing this time with us is to explore different temperatures. And there's really no right or wrong, but to really celebrate what happens. If a wine is cold, and it can be a bit more reticent and lean and more linear, as it warms up, it'll kind of unveil itself, kind of like the flowers next to Ryan, right? Kind of like opening up and doing that. Similarly, if we do open multiple wines at once, this is a great opportunity. It's kind of the silver lining if we are all at home with more frequency to see again how the wines evolve day in and day out. And I think wines crafted with this care, farmed in the manner that we do as a company, as Jackson family, there's tremendous purity and sincerity in the wines. And I think you see that evolve over a very long period of time over the course of several days. And it's fun, you're almost getting different chapters out of the book of each of these wines. Instead of like one finite thing, you're really seeing like different sides and facets. I think I would encourage everybody just to play around and see how these wines can all be different and unique. And sequentially too, go back and forth, white to red, rosé at the beginning, rosé at the end. There are no rules, right? So it's really fun. The dynamics are really there.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And make your own rules. And also that's how we all discover what we enjoy. And wine is a living thing, and it changes and evolves in the bottle, in the glass, all of that. So thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all of you for taking the time to be here, sharing the story about this amazing, beautiful place, these gorgeous wines that I'm just a huge fan of the region anyway. And this was just really great to be able to taste all of these and see kind of the differences and what you're doing and bringing forth. For those of you at home, thank you so much for joining us here. If you weren't able to taste the wines or didn't get them, we still have them available at Wine.com. And actually, we have a huge selection of Santa Barbara wines at Wine.com. So if you enjoyed any of these styles, I encourage you to kind of, explore. Just like Paul Greg, he's got you covered.
I'll deliver the whole thing.
So just explore. I mean, this is a really cool region that has diversity, but it has consistency. It's kind of like that yin and yang, which I think is very, very cool. So, but thank you all so much again for being here. Wonderful wines, delicious. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gwendolyn.